Done.
Cool. So thanks for attending, guys. Just give us a couple of minutes before we jump into this. But essentially, for anyone that is registered that doesn't know what we're going to be going through today, this session is very much going to be around remote onboarding. Given we're currently in week 4 of the lockdown, at least in the UK. I'm not sure where everyone will be dialing in from, but week 4 in the UK. I think it's important that we start looking at this and the future of what's going to happen around remote onboarding. I've got my colleague Phil here on the line who will introduce himself a little bit further in a second, but he works on the talent side, so I think he's going to have some really interesting input from a developer perspective and what we're kind of seeing in the market. So give us a couple more seconds and then we'll begin.
Great.
How are you finding it, Phil, while we wait to start?
Yeah, I think we've made huge leaps internally over the last 4 weeks in kind of trying to conquer this this battle with lockdown and remote working. So it'll be good today to share some ideas. And I'm actually looking forward to the Q&A section at the end as well, because I think from that we'll probably get some really interesting questions that might actually lead us down some different paths that we haven't explored yet. And we might come out of this learning something that we can apply to hackajob as well. So yeah, really excited to be on.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that everyone is learning as we go along at the moment. I don't think anyone really was prepared for this. I said the same in the webinar last week. And what I would say to all the listeners today is that although myself and Phil have got extensive experience across both recruitment and then moving into SaaS platforms, I would never profess that we are the absolute #1 experts in the UK. So if people want to throw ideas or people want to catch up with us afterwards, we're more than happy to do that. But just gone 1 o'clock, so we'll begin.
Lovely.
Cool. So just so you know who we all are. So my name's Darren. I'm the lead account manager / look after and head up the customer success and account management functions here at hackajob. So anyone that's a current customer will deal with me on a kind of monthly basis, helping them with getting the most from the platform.
Great. Yeah, and I'm Phil. I'm the head of talent at hackajob. So primarily focused on making sure that we have a great candidate supply for the clients that are signed up, making sure that candidate journey is as smooth as possible, making sure that all of our users have the best experience they can on the platform. And that's not just in terms of obviously the ultimate goal of finding them a job, but I'm sure some of you are aware that we have our learning products as well. So ensuring that candidates can learn a little bit along the way and upskill while they're kind of conducting their job search. Yeah, so that's what I do in a nutshell.
And I kind of alluded a minute ago that our experience. So do you want to tell us a little bit about your experience, Phil?
Previous to this, yeah. So I've been in recruitment for about 6 years. Started off 360 up in the Northeast, actually working the education market, which was very, very different to what we're doing now. A little bit more old school, I would say. Then I've moved into tech recruitment for the last 5 years, initially again up in the Northeast, before a few roles in London. Joined hackajob 3.5 years ago, and I've been with it, with the company, on a pretty incredible journey. From, I think there were 4 of us in an office in King's College London when I started, up to now having, big office in Romania, office in the UK, and great teams. So yeah, it's been quite an incredible journey.
Cool. And then just a quick introduction to my background. So I have been in recruitment since graduating back in 2012. I've worked in all across the UK. So I've worked in Cardiff, Manchester and London from a tech recruitment perspective. I've been with hackajob for a month less than Phil. So I remember those days in King's College where we were sat on one table with lots of entrepreneurial businesses around us, not really knowing the journey this was going to take us on.
Yeah.
Cool. So I guess we've kind of gone through introductions about us. What we're going to be going through today is a little bit about how to create a remote onboarding strategy from conversations that both myself and Phil have been having over the past 4 weeks or so, plus some stuff that was going on in the background with other people that I've worked with previously, before even COVID took off. Plus, be speaking through some simple measures you can take to ensure a smooth onboarding when you bring people on, not just from a tech perspective, but from a overall business perspective. Phil will be taking us through how to motivate teams who are working remotely. And then, like I say, there'll be Q&A opportunities at the end.
Great. So just wanted to introduce everyone to our the goal of hackajob to start off with. So this is our tagline. This is exactly what we focus on every week when we're in the office. When we have our bi-weekly all hands, we start every meeting with this quote, just to remind everyone why we're here and why we're doing what we do. So your jobs, your terms, simple. Our mission is to maximize people's potential. It's why we believe in dreaming big, yet searching small is the secret to a successful job search. So when we're talking about helping people maximize their potential, yes, your mind instantly goes to the people that we help place in new roles, but we want to focus that on every user that uses the platform. So whether that's helping our clients to make the hires, or just helping their internal teams to upskill slightly and learn a little bit more about the tech that they're working on, as we're aware that not every internal recruiter necessarily comes from a tech recruitment background, or on the candidate side, not just placing that person, but helping them to learn some skills along the way, so that everyone who has a touch point with hackajob, we hope, comes away with at least something that can help them to reach their potential in the future.
So we'll take you through now creating a remote onboarding strategy. So these are some of the things that we think are important, given the current culture and what we expect the culture to be post COVID. It's not exhaustive, so there's a lot more we could go through. This gives you a little bit of indication about the things we're thinking about. So from the side of defining core values and culture, what I think is really important is that from a remote perspective, it's very different to when you're bringing someone in physically. You need to define and instill a lot of values into someone, but it's very differently doing it. So getting that across to someone from a remote perspective, whether that's getting them some kind of booklets or handbooks on the culture within the business or anything like that, it's super important to make sure that people are aware of the expectations from that side.
Yeah, I think we'll come on to the how in a sec, but I think first of all, you need to have those values defined. I think most companies over the past few years have started to make sure they are clearly defined, to make sure that their brand is clearly defined, and part of that is your internal culture. So within hackajob, we have an abbreviation. Well, we have tech, so that's tech-driven, enthusiastic, committed, and humble. So once we know the values that we want our staff to have, then you can start to craft an onboarding strategy that ensures that your staff can live up to these values and can upskill in areas where perhaps they don't have experience in a company that needed them to be so tech driven, for example. The first step really is to clearly define exactly what you want from your staff, and then you can go about crafting an onboarding strategy that ensures you're getting the best out of them.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think setting clear expectations is also key. It's very easy when you're working remotely to miss those small wins. I think it's important that companies, when you're bringing someone on initially from a remote perspective, you're recognizing the wins that they're having on a day-to-day basis. No matter the seniority of someone, you want to feel recognized for something you've achieved, whether that's on a daily basis or a weekly or a monthly basis. I think it's very easy to get lost in the nature of what we're all doing. Like, I know from at least my side, from my team, I'm doing a lot on a day-to-day basis that is kind of in my own little world. So if I try to make sure that I've got a daily catch up with all the members of my team, whether it's just 5 minutes on a stand up or somewhere else in the day, to make sure that we're recognizing the effort they're putting in, because it can go unnoticed at times.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what we've learned we speak to hundreds of candidates every week, of course. And even in, the best of times, people are anxious and nervous about starting new jobs, particularly if they've been in a role for 3-4 years. This isn't something that they do on a regular basis. So it's an anxious time for people. And I think if you don't know what the expectations are, you don't know where you stand in terms of, okay, in my first 2 weeks, have I lived up to what they expect of me in that time, or am I lagging behind? Am I actually, doing a little bit better than they would expect? If you haven't set those very clear expectations of this is what we would expect for you in the first week, first 2 weeks, first 4 weeks. And obviously by using those milestones, you can then kind of drip in the responsibilities you're looking for them to take on. So maybe the first week's expectations are very, very basic. Look, we just want you to learn the system, get comfortable, make a friend within the business, just, get settled into things. Second week, we would expect, a little bit more. Fourth, by the first month, let's say, we'd expect a little bit more than that. So I think it's very, very important to give people that clarity so that it reduces as much as possible any anxiety around it, particularly at the moment. Like right now, not everyone who's looking for a job necessarily wanted to leave their last company. So not everyone who's looking for a job might even be that excited about finding a new company. We've seen obviously a lot of horrible news recently about people being furloughed, people being made redundant. So I think it's definitely something that companies have to bear in mind, that the clearer you can set those expectations, the less anxious, the less nervous you're going to make your new employee.
Yeah, and I echo those points. I think it's very complex, not only just from a remote perspective, but always starting a new job is very complex. Yeah. So I think the more that you can recognize that and take some of the anxiety away from someone, whether it's supporting them on a job level or on a personal level, whatever you can do to them to make them feel like they're part of the family a lot quicker is going to allow you to get more output from them, and allow them to delve into their role a lot quicker.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think from an organizational perspective, it's important to make sure that they've got all the equipment they need up front. So I know from my own perspective, actually the first day that I started a hackajob, I was given a brand new laptop and it didn't work. So we then had to get down to the store and get another one, take that one back. And with the environment we've got now, it's more important than ever. From an anxiety perspective, on my first day, if I was working remotely and I was sent out all the equipment night before, trying to set it all up, and then something goes wrong, that's going to put me into a state of panic. So I think making sure that everyone has got all their equipment up front and you've set them up on, and I know we'll go into this deeper when it talks about setting people up later, but making sure they've got Slack, making sure they've got Gmail, making sure they've got everything they need so that they can walk in on that first day or sit down if they're working remotely, as this is talking about, and they can feel like, okay, I'm ready to go.
Yeah. And I think as well, that gives them confidence in you as well. The more organized and the more fluid or smoother that the onboarding process is, the more confidence they're going to have in your company, 100%. So that's from scheduling, from ensuring that there are regular meetings, from ensuring that they have people to talk to. And we are going to come on to a lot of this a little bit further on in some more depth. But can't kind of stress enough that setting very, very clear expectations and getting organized and making sure that you're giving them the best chance of success right from the off is super, super important. There's nothing worse, I think, than kind of joining a new company and then on your first day, like you say, I mean, we'll let us off on that sense on one occasion. But no, I've joined companies before where it's been a lot worse, where you're waiting until, I don't know, the second day before you've got your email and your logins and things like that. And for that first day, you're kind of twiddling your thumbs. Yeah, you may have a policy handbook, but if you can come straight in and be given all the tools straight away, and it's all very, very, very nicely set up for you from the get-go, then I think it gives you a lot of confidence in your manager, in your business as a whole, that yes, this is the place for me. And regardless of the fact that everyone's working from home and we're in lockdown at the moment, this company, has the tools and has the organization to thrive within quite a challenging environment.
Cool. And I guess we've kind of gone across a lot of set yourself up for success, but is there anything else you wanted to add on that particular point?
Yeah, and I think set yourself up for success it does kind of sit above all of these different things. I think we're going to come on to all of the different ways you will set yourself up for success after this, but there'll definitely be things that are nuanced to your company. So what I would advise all hiring managers to do is sit down with the HR team, sit down with anyone who would be involved in the onboarding process, whether that's their team lead or even team members, and have a little brainstorming session where you're just kind of throwing ideas about, okay, when you joined, was there anything in particular that you were nervous about, or that we didn't do too well at that point? Don't be afraid to ask for feedback. I think that's crucial in any business. And vice versa, your staff should be comfortable to say, well, actually, yeah, in my first week, to be honest, you didn't have this sorted for me, and I wasn't too happy about that. So I think every business will have their own nuances, and it's about sitting down and really defining this and not kind of making it up as you go along. I think that's absolutely the worst thing that you can do.
Great. So again, this isn't an exhaustive list, but this is quite a few of the tools that both I use, both Phil uses, our teams use, and a lot of the clients that I work with use on a day-to-day basis. So from a Trello perspective, this kind of goes back to the previous point about setting yourselves up and the infrastructure that you've implemented in the business for that. So we use Trello actually ourselves when it comes to storyboarding and talking about what's next in the line from a product development perspective. And a lot of the people we'll be talking about on this call are related to developers, so they're obviously involved in a lot of the stories that are going to be developed and products that they're creating. But I think from a wider business perspective, Trello is great because it gives you a little bit more insight into what's going on in the business. I appreciate that once you get to a certain size, it's very hard to do that. But from a hackajob perspective, it's allowed us, I guess, to make sure that everyone feels involved in the process of what we're going to do. Because ultimately, yes, you might be one of 500-600 people in the business, but you also want to feel like you're making a difference. So whether it's Trello or any other software like Trello, having something implemented so that you can get everyone coming out with great ideas is, I think, a really important thing.
Yeah, agree. And then I guess on the next point, on the kind of Google Suite, I know it's a little bit basic. I'm sure a lot of companies out there are already very familiar with slides, with Meets or Hangouts, and Google Sheets, or at least Excel. Spreadsheets are hardly the most revolutionary thing on the market at the moment. But I think having the suite combined is very useful. So particularly when it comes to spreadsheets, I know ideally you want to get away from a spreadsheet heavy business. You want things to be a little bit more agile than that, and a little bit slicker than that. But it's a great place to obviously store information. So what we've been doing, what I've done with some of our teams out in Romania, is create FAQs. Obviously, I'm not in the office with these guys, and yes, they can Slack me, but if I'm in a meeting or busy kind of doing something else, then maybe I can't get them the answer as quickly as I could do. So one thing that you can do is obviously Canvas for those frequently asked questions, or if you are a manager who's who's got an IM tool, then literally just go back through all of your Slacks from your team. That's basically what I did. Went through, okay, which questions do I get asked, at least twice a day? Great. I'm going to create a FAQ, added that onto the spreadsheet, and then at least it gives some, your staff a resource to kind of look at if you're unavailable. That's not to say I would discourage the questions in general. Obviously, it's always best to be able to talk things through. As any manager out there will know, is sometimes someone will come to you with one problem, and then you'll actually get into quite an interesting discussion and come up with solutions to other things as you're doing it. So while I'd still absolutely encourage conversation, it's a great shortcut if you do want to put the kind of frequently asked questions onto a Google Sheet, as well as training materials, as well as anything that's going to help your team get through the day when they're unable to kind of ask questions on a regular basis. And then obviously we have our numbers and our KPIs and things like that on there as well, just so that we can ensure that the teams know where they are, where they stand. And it goes back to my point previously on setting those expectations. While it's super important for your new staff, it is still very important for your existing staff as well. Everyone likes to know, am I doing a good job? And if anyone's unsure on that and they're on the fence and they're not sure how well they're doing, then again, that's something that causes anxiety, causes stress. So the more information you can kind of have readily available to your teams, I think the better. Slides, again, very simple presentational tool, but it fits along nicely with the kind of Google Suite. You can get it shared amongst your team members very easily. I know we use it on a weekly basis to kind of present different things to the teams and make sure that while we are working remotely, all the teams are kind of tapped into what other teams are doing, and there's no mystery. Because I think one of the challenges definitely is that of working remotely is you can lose those little conversations around the office that sometimes turn into great ideas, particularly among different teams. So if your teams become very siloed when you're working from home and they're kind of locked away and not talking to each other, Someone within your sales function might have a great idea that applies very well to a different team, or your product guys might not be getting the right feedback because they're not just getting that chat around the office. So I think the more presentations you can be doing, the more information you can be sharing between teams, the better. And obviously slides is a great way to do that. And then finally, Hangouts is a nice, quick, easy to use meeting tool. I know Zoom's got a lot more features, a little bit slicker in a lot of ways, but if you're just jumping on for a quick 5-minute chat at the start of the day, or you're running a virtual pub or something like that, it's a really quick way to just ping a link out. And if you're using Google Calendar, you can automatically include a Hangouts link in any calendar invite you send out. So a really easy way to get that link out to all of your teams, get it logged, they know where it is, and they can join the meeting. There's no excuses for being 2 or 3 minutes late for a meeting because they couldn't find the link for it.
And again, to echo your point about teams in isolation, I think it's important that you make sure during this period that you're not just getting teams isolated and siloed off to one area. I know that what I'm really passionate about at hackajob is that myself, yourself, and other members of the head of team are talking on a daily basis, but we're also having weekly catch-ups with cross-functional teams to make sure that everyone feels like they're getting input, but also to make sure that everyone realizes what each other are doing. So I think that it's all well and good the praise coming from your managers, but really if someone in, I don't know, the product team or the engineering team or the marketing team is recognizing and understanding what you're adding to the business, I think that's huge.
Yeah, definitely.
So from a Zoom perspective, Phil, I think you went through a lot of it on the Hangout and the Meet stuff. So thanks for that. Zoom, I guess I'm a big fan of making sure that conversations are there for a reason, not just having conversations for conversation's sake, which I think it becomes very easy to do when working remotely. That it's very important that you're having conversations, but make sure that when you're going into a meeting, there's a goal you're trying to achieve. And then at the end of that meeting, assess, how I achieved that goal? Did we come to the conclusion we were looking to? Even if you've come to a different conclusion, as long as you've achieved something in it, that's kind of important. And from a Zoom perspective and a Hangout perspective, a little hackajob plug. So we've just done a integration with both Zoom and Hangouts off the back of some questions from clients we work with on how they can continue the interview process that they've previously done while working remotely. And we'll come on to it a little bit later, but we also developed something what we're calling dual code, which is a paired programming tool to again allow clients that we're working with to continue those face-to-face interviews that otherwise with that tool they wouldn't be able to properly assess the abilities of candidates.
I think it's a great tool for onboarding as well. I think there's definitely applications, coming back to those clearly defined goals, coming back to those clearly defined metrics that you're setting people. Obviously, you want to be able to check in with them throughout the day, throughout those weeks. As much as you're setting those goals, you don't just want to go, right, okay, here you go, I'll see you in 4 weeks and let's see if you've hit it. You need to have those checkpoints throughout the week. So if it is a developer that we're talking about here, then doing a pair programming session with them once, twice a week, however often it is, just to check that their code quality is good, but also you can be chatting to them while you're on that, how you're finding things, and you can, kill 2 birds with 1 stone, as it were, by using tools like dual code or other paired programming tools to make sure that you are able to kind of work alongside them, even though you're doing it remotely.
Great.
Cool. And Slack, finally. So Slack's the IM tool that we've used for a long time. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with it. Quite a big tool on the market, and it's great. So obviously you have different channels which you can pin. So any information that you want to go to the whole company, you can make sure everyone's in there. If you want to share general updates, you want to share links to meetings for that are relevant to everyone, or you just want a place where people can be sharing ideas or passing on leads that they've got from speaking to users or external actors. There's also private groups. So again, if you want to group your teams into certain sections, so whether that's a specific team group, or I know myself and Darren's teams have a joint group as well, so that yes, we can discuss our own ideas and our own plans within the talent group. yes, they can discuss all of their own plans and ideas within their CSM group, their customer success management group. But then we also have one which is kind of the operational side of the business, which is both the CSMs and the talent advocates able to share ideas and work together within that one channel. So you can divide your teams up nicely. And then obviously there is a direct messaging function, and they also have Slackbot, which is kind of a great reminder tool. So you can ask Slackbot to remind you at 3 o'clock to call Dave, or you can use it in various other ways just to ensure that it helps you to organize your day. They have some great integrations as well. So I think I was doing a bit of research for this, and I saw Zapier actually have a Slack integration, which will let their teams know the latest weather update. I'm guessing if they don't have Windows. And basically that's to start a conversation, because they run fully remote teams. So, you know, if you get an update to say, oh, today's going to be rainy, then the hope is that your team start moaning about the weather. Wouldn't recommend it at the moment, because if all your teams are constantly being reminded how sunny and hot and lovely it is outside, might not be the best thing. But it kind of goes to show that there are lots of different ways you can integrate with Slack, and you can kind of use it as a really good automation tool to both increase the communication of your teams, but also increase the fluidity of those communications and make sure that you're automating as much as possible in terms of your organization.
Amazing. Cool. So now through measures to ensure a smooth onboarding process.
Cool.
So I guess from a send out equipment proactively, we've kind of gone through this, but I think something to kind of include, and that's why it's in a don't forget me section. So I think company swag, talking about whether it's company cups or whether it's talking about jumper, just make people feel like a part of the family very early on. I think it's the little things that are going to make a difference very early. Like anyone that's on LinkedIn will be constantly seeing what LinkedIn send out. They're probably, for me, the ones at the forefront of this in the industry at the moment.
Yeah, and I think as well, it's about chatting to your new starter as well. So I know within our teams, we've had different setups. So some people already had a second screen at home, other people didn't. So we obviously arranged for those people to be able to go into the office, pick up another screen, pick up keyboards, pick up stands so that the laptop's a little bit higher and you're not craning your neck. Whatever it is that's going to make someone feel a bit more comfortable in their first few weeks, I think as much as possible, you should try and accommodate that. So definitely don't forget to have a chat with your new starter. What is their home setup like? You know, do they have a screen? Hopefully a lot of developers out there do have quite a nice setup, because I know that work from home is something that a lot of companies are offering these days. But there might be some, particularly, I don't know if they've just moved to the UK, or they're in a situation where it's perhaps their first job out of university or something like that, where maybe they wouldn't have that great setup at home. So just asking those questions before they start, and within reason, trying to accommodate as much of that as you can. Again, it's going to get you a lot of brownie points in terms of them realizing that you were the right company to join, but you're also going to get the best out of them from a work perspective as well.
No, I agree. And then from a prepare all admin perspective, so this for me goes a lot further than simply making sure that they've got their Gmail and everything like that. I know from experience moving to a couple of companies over the years that when you walk in on that first day, you have like 50 different documents you need to be signing, and you need to bring in your passport and all that kind of stuff. During the current environment, and potentially with the future environment of hiring and onboarding, companies need to make sure that they're prepared for this, and making sure they're using tools like DocuSign or something like that, just to make everyone's life easier. As we were talking about anxiety earlier, there's nothing that is going to make you more anxious than thinking, oh, I don't have a printer, but I've got to print out 50 of these documents. I've got to sign them all. So making sure that you've got all the technology to allow you to work remotely goes beyond just the emails. It's everything else that goes in included in that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think you've covered that quite nicely. I don't think there's anything for me to add on that.
Nice. And then from a sorry, I'm skipping kind of around here, but from a onboarding calendar perspective, again, when you join a new team, you want to understand, what am I looking to achieve in this first week? What am I looking to achieve in the first month? So this is more from a hiring manager perspective, but also from a HR, making sure the hiring managers are doing this perspective. During that first week, make sure that they know what all their tasks are going to be, whether it's designing a calendar for them or making sure that you're putting calls in the diary to check in with them just to see how they're getting on with tasks. Having something specific for onboarding is going to be key, because you don't want someone during that first week feeling like they're kind of twiddling their thumbs and trying to find tasks to do, because that first week often is very much like that. You need to, but in an office environment, you can kind of get away with that because there's going to be people walking around the office, introducing themselves. That won't be happening if you're working remotely. So if you need to, and we'll move on to that point in a second, or Phil will, but if you need to make sure that they've got calls with both their own team, but also cross-functional teams, that's going to be important to getting someone feeling like they're part of the team very early.
Yeah, and I think just to touch on the onboarding calendar, that's not just a calendar for them, that's ensuring that it's plugged into everyone's calendar who's relevant. You don't want to be scrabbling around on the day to find someone to do this piece of training with them, or, oh, I assumed so-and-so would be free at this time, you know, what they say about assumptions. So yeah, you never ever want to be making assumptions when it comes to this. You want a very defined calendar, both for schedule, both for the new joiner, as well as yourself, as well as anyone else who'll be involved in the training, so that it runs as smoothly as possible. You have those checkpoints in, you're confident that they're getting all the tools and all of the information that they need at the time they need it to hit those first week, second week, fourth week goals, whatever it is. And it might not be first, second, and fourth week. You all have your own businesses, they all run in completely different ways. I'm sure, you know, when you sat down with your team and kind of defined, okay, what sort of expectations do we have for a new starter? Some of you might extend that to, okay, first month, second month, third month, however it is you want to do it. I think making sure that it's very clearly defined and that it's booked into everyone's calendar and everyone's aware what they're taking that new person through, or what their responsibilities are within that process, super, super important. And then, yeah, on the kind of buddy side of it, I think one of the companies that we worked with for a long time and did still do this to really, really good effect. So they find you a buddy from a different team. So they will find you someone to mentor you within the existing team, which I think is very important. Having someone who's doing your day-to-day job that you can go do on a peer-to-peer level and ask questions that maybe you don't want to ask your manager with. Obviously, if they don't know the answer, or that it is something that, you know, your manager is better to ask, then absolutely they should point you in the right direction. But just having someone that you know is on your level, quite affable, quite friendly, who is happy to kind of show you the ropes a little bit and be there for advice, super important. But I think having a buddy in other parts of the business is incredibly important as well. And that's both from a perspective of, you don't want everyone to come out of this lockdown and out of this COVID situation, and yeah, they know one person in their team really well, they know a little bit about the rest of their team, but actually the rest of the business, they've never met anyone. They've got no friends kind of around the office, and they're almost feeling like a stranger, even though they've worked for the company for maybe 2 or 3 months. So you want to be able to introduce them to other people in the business. In terms of getting them introduced to the wider business and everyone, yes, that's a long process. But within that first week, if you can assign them a mentor within their existing team and a buddy within the wider business, someone, again, that they can just ask for advice, not necessarily about their day-to-day, but more about the company, or how are you dealing with work from home, or anything at all, then I think it's a really nice way to kind of introduce them to the company, make sure that they feel welcome, make sure that they know a few people, have a few friendly faces when it comes to the virtual meetings and all of that sort of stuff. Because it can, again, be an anxiety-provoking thing if you feel like, yeah, I've been working here 4 weeks, but I still don't actually know anyone. So yeah, the more you can get them introduced, the better.
Yeah, and Vodafone do a really good job of that too. So what Vodafone do is that if you come from a non-English speaking country, they will buddy you up with someone that speaks that language natively. Yep. So because we've helped them with a lot of people that have come from overseas over the years, I've seen this happen quite a few times. So it's not always, like you say, it's not always someone from your own team. And for me, if you can get someone involved from a different team, I think that's huge, because you, especially in enterprise businesses, you could have an entire floor dedicated just to the developers. So on a day-to-day, you may not even see people outside of your own function. Yeah. So getting involved with other people and seeing how they're getting on with the business and any problems they're facing, anything they're seeing, I think that's a really key thing to look into.
Absolutely. I think you're trying as much to manufacture those things that would happen organically. So I know obviously when we have new starters in their first weeks in normal times, we'll arrange team lunches, we'll arrange socials for them, we'll make sure that they are integrating, that they are meeting other team members outside of their immediate team. So yeah, I think as much as possible, the more that you can kind of create that by introducing them to random people across the business, the better results you'll have. And on the flip side, it's really good for the people that you're asking to buddy up as well. I'm sure all of us could do with a few extra chats at the moment. I think now that we're 4 weeks in, I think everyone's starting to feel the weight of lockdown a little bit more. So actually, to have someone who is a little bit more senior in the team, introduced to someone and asked, look, can you just be there for them if they do have any questions? Have a little catch up with them every now and again. Make sure they're getting on okay. That's a nice segue into kind of mentorship and eventually leadership for that person, but also it's an opportunity for them to socialize a little bit more during their working day, which is definitely not a bad thing at the moment.
Cool. Anything to add on the social activities? I think you've kind of covered it quite well.
Yeah, I think we've covered the one-on-one stuff. I think definitely there is a opportunity to be doing more virtual activities. So we do a virtual pub every Friday. Obviously, we've got a virtual pub quiz. We've got a new channel on Slack, which is people sharing all of the food that they've made. Some great, some not so great. We've got a channel on Slack where people are sharing what they're listening to, the movies, the series they're watching on an evening, hopefully on an evening anyway. I think at the moment we're all binge watching quite a lot of Netflix. We're all getting through as many albums as we can throughout the day, just to try and keep ourselves entertained. So the more that you can get people talking about that, sharing that, the better. It's, at the end of the day, we need to try and keep manufacturing as much of these things that we would have in the office already, just by having the Sonos on and by going for a drink on a Friday and looking at each other's food in the kitchen and going, God, Joe, that looks horrible. So yeah, I think you need to manufacture as much of that as possible, and that's by no means an exhaustive list. I'm sure there's some companies out there that come up with even more weird and wonderful, like wacky, crazy ideas to get teams engaged remotely, that more than we have. But yeah, a few ideas that we've kind of touched on would be those virtual pub sessions and the food and the sharing of movies and music and things.
Awesome.
Cool. So in terms of keeping your teams motivated, obviously a few different tips here. So first one would be make sure that you're helping with their time management. I think it's very hard at home to stick to the same schedule that you would in the office, but you have to try as much as you can to do so. So I know I've had people on my team working till 7, 8 at night at times, working through lunch. Just because you've not got those regular breaks in the day where at 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock everyone stands up and leaves the office, it's a prompt to kind of do that within your working day. Or again, when we're in the office, we have our end of day stand up, and great, a lot of people leave. Again, it's a signal that the day's over and it's time for me to go home. We even had one team member mention that she's actually proactively started going out for a run at the time she would do her morning and her evening commute, just to try and simulate that start and end of the day. So I think the more that you can build yourself a schedule, make sure you've got regular breaks, make sure that you are taking lunch, make sure that you do have a clearly defined end of day and start of day, I think is super important. And then within that, giving yourself a schedule. So it's very easy to get, particularly when you're at home, you're focused in on the laptop, it's just you, there's no distractions, so easy to get sucked into one task. And then you've been doing it for 2, 3, 4 hours, which is great. I'm sure you'll get some very good results from that. But what are you then leaving by the wayside and not necessarily touching that day? So making sure that you do have a schedule, that you do try and stick to it within reason, and you do try and cover off all of the different things you need to do in a day, rather than kind of getting sucked into doing one thing, which is very easy to do at home.
Good. Yeah, and I think that's huge. From time management perspective, I agree that, and I'll move on to this point from a case study perspective right at the end. But I think a lot of time people focus more on need to focus more on the kind of output from someone rather than worrying too much about what schedule are they sticking to. Because in the current environment we're working, I think the breaks that maybe you wouldn't have taken at work, naturally are key. Like I know myself, I'm going for a couple of 10-minute walks every day because that's time that I probably would have walked across someone else in the office and had a quick conversation with them, or gone and made myself a cup of tea. Currently, no one can see it, but in the flat I'm in at the moment, I'm literally in a studio flat, so I can never get away from my work areas. So if you're in a similar situation to me, find a way to get away from your work areas is going to help a lot.
Yeah, I think giving yourself if you are in that situation where you're having to work from a bedroom or work from studio flat or something like that, giving yourself even a section of the room that is your work section, and that's where you do all the work. And then when you close the laptop, at least when you're in the other part of the room, it kind of feels like you're not in that workspace. So that's not working from your bed. Trying as much as possible not to work from your sofa. Try as much as possible to give yourself that defined workplace, and give yourself those defined hours.
Yeah. And I guess for the managers out there, it's from what I've gauged from this experience, I think it's often important to be proactive, not reactive. So don't wait for your team to come to you with a problem. Anticipate it. Look at what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. Is there anything that you can look at and say, okay, I can see this member of the team is struggling on this at the moment. How can I add some value here?
Yeah, 100%. So I think on a daily basis, when I'm kind of sharing updates and things like that in Slack, since we started lockdown, I've always had these kind of 4 points right at the top of my update, which is keep scheduling calls with each other, and keep talking through your problems. Keep giving yourself a work schedule so you can cover off everything that's needed, but also give yourself the breaks that are needed. Keep your head up and let me know if you need anything, as well as kind of familiarize yourself with the other team's workflows so that we can be collaborating even though we're not in the office and we're missing out on those in-office conversations, as it were. So yeah, as a manager, absolutely encourage breaks. I mean, don't get me wrong, you don't want them taking a break all day. Obviously, we do still need to be productive, particularly within this time. But I think the worst thing you can do is try and kind of work the team too hard, or try and expect that they will kind of work from exactly 9 till 12, and then again from 1 through till 5 or whatever it is, because like you say, those little trips over to make a coffee, those little chats that you have around the office, they're all gone. So you do need to take that extra 5-10 minute break here and there just to refresh the mind. If you're lucky enough to be able to step outside, then do it. But even if it's just a quick like social call with one of your friends or something like that, that just takes your mind off things for a little bit, and then you dive back in, you're going to get better results in the long run. You'll be more productive over the whole day for those 5, 10, 15 minute intervals that you've made sure that you built into your day, and you've not just worked all the way through. Cool. And then on the second point, I think this is super, super important. So we actually had a new starter she'd been in to do a little bit of the onboarding, but her first full day of working as a talent advocate was the very first day we worked from home. So she's obviously had a challenge that was a bit unique to the business. And I think the only thing I said to her is the only mistake you can make within these next couple of weeks or during this lockdown time is to not ask for help. Like the only thing that will annoy me about anything you do in the short term anyway is if you do not ask for help during this time. So just make sure that your team are comfortable speaking up, coming to you with problems. It might not necessarily be about their working day. It could be, I know I've had it a few times, people just coming to me saying, look, my internet's not very good, or people coming to me and saying that, actually I do need a second screen from the office. Fair enough, on the internet one, there's not a lot you can do, but in terms of getting them more equipment, or in terms of booking in another training session, or in terms of getting a call set up with one of their peers, or whatever it is, there's always something you can do to help solve a problem in terms of their actual working day. So making sure that they are coming to you and they are comfortable coming to you with these issues, and they don't kind of just sit and suffer in silence is super, super important, because again, you don't have those opportunities for them to learn organically just by being immersed in the working culture. So they do need to be speaking up if they do have any issues during that time.
Cool. And then I think we've kind of covered the other points exhaustively during this call anyway, so I'll move on. And I've seen quite a few Q&As are coming in during this period, so thanks for doing that. We'll get to them in a couple of minutes time. I want to make sure that we've got enough time to go through them all. So I'll kind of go through these quite quickly, but these for me are two of the three remote studies or case studies that I think people should look at when looking at remote work for us as a business. So, Phil, you mentioned the third, and funny enough, during this session, Zapier, probably the third one I would look at. But Buffer and Basecamp, so both of these businesses started with the ideology of being remote-first businesses. So I've actually got a friend that works for Buffer, so I kind of understand their ideology around it. So most remote businesses, the reason they do it is that they don't want to limit themselves based on localities. They want to limit themselves based on skill sets. So they want to be able to look out onto the entire market and not say, okay, this person is living in Norwich, we're in London, this couldn't work, or whatever. They want to be able to say, actually, we found this incredible person who's currently working in Hanover. Let's bring him into the team because he's exactly what we need. So that's kind of ideology around that. Both businesses are global businesses. So Buffer across Asia, America and Europe. Last time I kind of saw Basecamp, the US and Europe themselves. Apologies, my eyes venture for a couple of seconds here. I've got a couple of quotes that I found really interesting when looking into them in the last couple of days. But one of the interesting parts I saw and was raised in a webinar actually that I was listening to from Zapier was, when you are working from home and you're not viewing what someone is doing on a minute by minute basis, a lot of the small things you monitor daily will go away. So you're no longer looking at, okay, has this person come in 2 minutes after 9 o'clock when we start at 9? Has this person taken 2 cups of tea today rather than the usual one or something like that? So the more you work from home, the more you'll focus on the output and actually what someone's achieved and celebrate. So we're all human. We all work in very different ways. So someone might need that extra break just to get them through the extra period that they're working on. So I think remote a lot of the time will offer you something there. I don't know if you've got any kind of opinions on that point, Phil.
No, I think in every business you should always focus on the output. People work in different ways, and I think we see that within our own teams. There are some people who there are more than one ways to skin a cat, let's say, to use an old phrase. So I think you always have to respect that people have different ways of working. Looking at things like call time and number of calls or things like that don't always reflect the results at the end of the day. So yeah, I think in any business at any time, you should be looking at the output and the results for the week. Obviously, if the output and the results are bad, then you use the input metrics to work out, okay, why might this be? Perhaps if you'd made more calls, or perhaps if you'd done more of this or this activity, then the results would be better. But your end goal should be to focus on the output, and you use your input as kind of diagnosis.
Awesome. And then I guess is an endpoint, because it's kind of salient to everything we've discussed in this. The final quote is, manager's natural instinct is to worry that her workers aren't getting enough work done. But the real threat is that they wind up working too hard. And because the manager isn't sitting across from her worker anymore, she can't look the person in the eyes and see burnout. So I think that's huge. I think that we all need to recognise that the people we're working with, the people we're bringing into our own organisations, they're not robots. And they may not come to you to say, look, I'm really struggling with this at the moment. So we all need to find ways around this currently to find a way to recognize, okay, someone's struggling, someone's feeling burnt out. How can I respond around this?
Yeah, and I think, like, as we've touched on already, end of day stand-ups are a good way to do that. Regular catch-ups as well, and not just talking about work, talking about social things, how you feeling, how you getting on, any good movies you've watched recently, just having an actual chat, particularly at the end of the day. I think the start of the day is stand-up. Like if you're doing a stand-up at 9, very good to focus very much on the objectives for the day. How did you get on yesterday, and make it very business focused. I think the end of the day one, celebrate some wins. Very important to be celebrating wins and making sure that everyone feels happy about the work that they're doing. But also just have a chat, and just try and loosen up at the end of the day, and let everyone know that, this is it, done now. We've done what we can. Let's enjoy our
let's let loose a little bit.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so that's the end of us talking. I've seen quite a few people raise their hands, so I'm keen to make sure that we're getting to your own questions. So I'll let you jump into them, Phil.
Cool. So I'll jump on to the Q&A. So, okay, we've got an anonymous question here first. So what are some of the activities that we can do to ensure that everyone feels involved when working remotely? So I think we've touched on a lot of these already. I think definitely the social side of it, making sure that you do have a weekly social in the diary, whether that's end of work on a Friday or whenever it might be. It doesn't have to involve drinking. Just because ours does doesn't mean yours does. So it could be anything that you want to do. I think, again, the Slack channels, encouraging people to share more about their day and get talking is definitely another point in there. And I think the regular meetings within your teams and kind of intra-team as well. So we have our weekly talent meeting where, again, we share ideas. How is everyone doing? I'll also have regular catch-ups with the team one-on-one because they might not feel comfortable sharing that information in the group. But then again, as I touched on earlier, like we have meetings with your team, Darren, as well, to discuss, okay, how's the overall ecosystem of the platform working at the moment? We'll have meetings with the product team, the marketing team. So I think there is a risk that you go too far with meetings. Absolutely, you don't want to fill everyone's calendars just with meetings and reduce the productivity. But there's definitely a call for more meetings in terms of discussing your day-to-day activities, as well as trying as much as possible to ensure that there are social things in people's calendars and there are fun things to get people involved and chatting as well. Anything to add on that?
No, not really. I think from my side, something you said was quite interesting, that don't just focus on the drinking side of things. So I think it's very easy to do that due to the nature of everyone's lives at times, that people focus too much on like doing that kind of stuff, but doing quizzes. If you're into gaming, jumping onto the PlayStation or Xbox and playing a bit of games together, just finding time to socialize each other that you would do normally at work. I know personally, and from your side, Phil, we're both very much into football, and there's not a lot of football going on at the moment. So finding those extra things, and I'm learning some amazing things about somewhat people. Like found out our CEO this week is his favorite food is goujons, and eats it every single day while working at home. So you find out a lot of weird stuff about people. So taking the opportunity to learn that is good for growth in teams.
Cool. Yeah. So I think in terms of the next question, so I feel like my wider team are really overworking themselves by working from home. How can I kind of enforce that they take regular breaks and don't stay up all night, all hours working? So I guess the short answer is you can't. All you can do is absolutely encourage that behavior doesn't happen. So I think one good way is, as we've already touched on, having an end of day stand-up. We do a morning stand-up as well. I find that's really productive as well and helps focus people for the day. But an end-of-day stand-up clearly defines the end of the day. And then you make sure that stand-up is talking about what you're going to do this evening, what movies, what's everyone cooking. Get people into the mindset that work's over for the day and it's time to think about food or Netflix or going for their daily walk or whatever it is. So I think that's very important. I think making sure that you know that they are working as well. So I think one of the reasons people work late is that you can't see them in the office cracking on. You can't see them in the office, how hard they're working. So if their numbers aren't very good, they start to think, oh, all they can see is the KPIs. All they can see is my call time or whatever. They're going to think I've not done a lot of work. So there is a bit of trust in there. And don't get me wrong, there might be instances where people aren't necessarily doing a lot of work and you will have to obviously deal with that. But if you're having those regular one-on-one catch-ups and you're giving people the confidence that you know they're doing what they can, they're doing the best they can, and they're applying themselves, then I think that gives people the confidence to know that, okay, it's 5:30, it's 6 o'clock, I can shut my laptop, I've put a good shift in, I'm going to enjoy my evening.
Cool. Yeah, I wouldn't add anything onto that. I think that's exactly what I would have said.
Cool. We've actually had a chat come in. So we've got 2 chats here at the moment. So from Lucy Nicolaitis. So sorry, what was the pair programming tip mentioned? Darren, I don't know if you want to just reiterate that.
Cool. Yes. So hopefully I'm answering the question you're looking for here.
I think on dual code.
Yeah, exactly. So from a pair programming perspective, what we found when this first started is, at least from my side, talking to a lot of clients, they obviously weren't prepared for what was about to happen here, and they have pair programming in their interview process. So what we've implemented, at least on our side, is a tool so that all this pair programming can be done remotely. And both from from dual pro coding perspective. A couple of managers can jump onto a call, can go through a session with a developer to get a bit of an idea about how they work. We've also implemented video and chat into it, so that because obviously with pair programming, the chatting through what you're doing is the key to it. So so that hopefully that answers the question. But essentially, we've developed a tool to help.
And what I would say is, I would just go further. I would say it's not just an interviewing tool. Like, that can absolutely be an onboarding tool as well. Like, you could get your mentor, if you're giving your new staff member a mentor, you could absolutely get them set up on the pair programming as well, so that they can be doing those checkpoints, they can be coding together, they can be offering that advice. But as I said, also kind of checking in how you're feeling, how you're getting on, as well.
Hopefully that answered. Just say hopefully that answered the question. If it didn't, then please do feel free to drop a note onto LinkedIn, or our email addresses at the end. Shoot anything across, and we'll be more than happy to answer.
Yeah, and then we've had another one come in from Thomas Nichol. So I have someone joining next week. What are the biggest mistakes I should watch out for and avoid?
Do you want to go, or do you want me to go?
I can jump in. So I think the biggest one, as I said, would be kind of making it up as you go along. So I think this week, what I would advise you do is sit down with your whether that's your head of HR or whoever the relevant HR person is, that person's team lead, as well as someone else within the team. And as I said, do a little brainstorming session. Okay, what are the possible things that could stop this person achieving the expectations that we're going to set for them? So first of all, what are the expectations? So in week 1, we expect this. In week 2, I'd expect this. By week 4, I'd expect this. Great. What are the hurdles? What are the challenges that could potentially stop them hitting expectation for week 1, 2, 4? Great. Once you've got your hurdles laid out, now you need to work out a solution to those hurdles. So one of the hurdles could be, again, feeling anxious that they don't know other people within the business. Great. Let's set up some conference calls. Let's give them a buddy. Let's make sure that they feel welcome in that sense. Another hurdle could be they don't feel confident with the tools that you're giving them to use. Great. Do we have an online tutorial for these? You know, I know particularly when you're using, like, for example, our ATS, Close.io, we've got a great CSM team. We can set up a remote onboarding session with the CSM at Close for any new member. So do I need to book in calls with external sources that are going to help them upskill on these tools? So there are, I think there are a lot of things that could go into that, but I think the only mistake, or the biggest mistake you can make, is kind of making it up as you go along, or trying to just attack it as you would in the office. I think super, super important to have that session this week, really kind of dig into what the expectations are and what are the challenges to hitting those expectations. And then let's make sure that we give our new starter the tools to overcome every one of those challenges. And those are challenges in both a social sense, in terms of a tooling sense, as well as in terms of the actual day-to-day coding or deployment or whatever it is, based on the nature of the employee that you have joining. I hope that answered your question, Thomas. But again, similar to the last one, if you do want to follow up, or if you wanted to connect on LinkedIn and bounce some ideas, absolutely happy to do that.
Cool. Next one.
Lovely. Cool. So I'm getting asked lots of questions about when we can go back to the office and what the future of our working life is going to look like, but I don't know how to answer these questions. Please help.
Cool. Wow, that's a poison challenge to the question. So, at least from both our sides, obviously, like I said at the start, we both sit on our own exec team. So we're kind of looking at it on our own side at the moment. We're trying to understand. I personally, like I say, I'm in a one-bed studio flat, so I'm quite keen to get the answers myself. But all you can do at the moment is pay attention to what the government is saying. There's not a huge amount more you can do from that, and just be transparent with the staff. So if the advisory is this, then this is what we're going to do. If the isolation comes down in a week's time, then this is what we're going to do. So I think transparency currently is probably one of the biggest words that companies should be bearing in mind. Yeah. So talking to your staff and saying, okay, this is what we're going to do, or this is what we understand we're going to do, because then they can make allowances for that. I know that some of the people that I'm friends with, when the lockdowns first started, or they thought they were going to, and they lived in London. A lot of them have gone back to where I'm from originally, to the Bath area. So I would just say keep an eye out on the government guidances and pay attention to them. They're there for a reason, so just bear them in mind.
Yeah, and I think try and create a sense of solidarity out of this as well. So we've gone to weekly all hands meetings to try and make sure that we update our staff as much as possible. But in those, we're admitting, look, this is not a situation we have any control of. We can't control the situation, but we can control how we react to it. And I think that needs to be the message across the whole team. Like, there are people that are, out there struggling, hopefully a lot more than our teams are. When we think of the NHS, when we think of key workers, this is absolutely a time for the country and businesses to come together. So, use this opportunity, be as transparent as you can, but at the same time, I would be planning for lockdown, not indefinitely, but at least for the next couple of months. It looks that way anyway. So I wouldn't be kind of dangling the carrot of, oh, maybe we'll be back next week or anything like that, because being honest, it doesn't look very likely at the moment. What you need to do is try and create a culture where you all think, right, yes, this is a challenging situation. Yes, this is a horrific global crisis, but we are going to come out of this stronger as a business. Whether we are financially stronger, yeah, maybe not, maybe not in all cases, but in terms of being a close-knit team that's got through something that is completely unprecedented, we're going to come out on the other side stronger for this. We're going to have stronger connections, and we're going to be able to bounce back on the other side of this situation. So I think just trying to get that solidarity going and trying to be as transparent as you can, while also being quite honest and upfront that this isn't something we control, and we're going to have to see how it plays out, is absolutely key.
Cool. Okay, so that session went very, very quickly, but we've come to the end of it. What I'll do is I'll drop everyone that's joined the session an email just to see if there's any more questions. It sounds like from Phil, there's quite a few more questions that we could have gone through. So I'll drop an email into everyone that's joined. Hopefully everyone enjoyed it. Feel free to connect with either myself or Phil on LinkedIn if you've got any other questions.
Yep, we've got 4 more questions, so we'll try and get some answers out to those as well.
Amazing. All right, thanks for coming, guys. Look forward to seeing you on our next session.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.